Welcome to a Wednesday morning edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. Nick Whalen and Brandon Kravitz here with you as we are every Wednesday morning. Brandon, it's been a hectic couple weeks around the holidays. Good to be back on a normal schedule. I know you and I have both been sick over the last couple of months. I went through, a multi-week AirPod saga. As you can see, AirPods are back.
Looking good.
I ordered a replacement AirPod to replace the one that was lost. That was a whole thing. It turns out they have to sit in the case for a full day to pair and get the same firmware. So went through that battle, finally got it working. And then I'm also moving this week. So we're getting everything out of our house. I'm sitting in an empty room, which you can't really see based on how I have the camera positioned, but we're moving things around. And then the other AirPod turns up. So now I have 3 AirPods.
Wow. Well, hey, if you grow that third ear, you're going to be all set, ready to go.
Yeah, right. I don't know if there's a way I could maybe stuff 2 of them and get double sound in one ear. But we're back on track.
Surround sound.
Yeah. Please get the questions rolling. We will take live viewer questions over the second half of the pod. So throw those in the chat. We are not ignoring them. We will hit on as many as we can, if not all of them, later in the podcast. So again, feel free to start stacking those up. Brandon, we had a pretty mild slate in the NBA last night. We had a few blowouts. Sacramento, Detroit is funny because Kings win that game 131-110. I was on NBA radio last night, and my best bet was Detroit team total under 113.5, which somehow ended up hitting. I completely wrote this one off. The Pistons put up 47 points in the first quarter. They were leading this game by 20 midway through the second quarter and ended up losing by 21.
Yeah, 15-point fourth quarter for the Pistons. I think, like you said, they were up by 20 at one point and then wound up losing by 20. It's almost hard to pull that off, even for a bad team like the Pistons. But this is their issue. It's weird to say this about a team that only has 3 wins. I actually don't think the Pistons are that bad. I think that there are things that I see about this team that I like. There's a scrappy nature about them. They've got some talent on this roster. They cannot put things together for 4 full quarters. That's their problem. So perhaps they need to retool things. Certainly not saying that they got their roster for the future, but there are some pieces that I think you could keep for this version of the rebuild, and maybe it comes down to a coaching issue. But I think the Pistons moving forward are a team that you can bet on here and there, but you also have to strap in and get ready for games like you saw last night.
Yeah, I felt like a complete idiot. Alex and I talked through that game. We're like, why is this line only 11? This is insane. Hammer the Kings tonight. And I'm like, man, we're going to get tweets. We're going to look like we know nothing about the NBA. And thankfully the Detroit Pistons showed up and are the Detroit Pistons. You are right. From a betting perspective, it hasn't been maybe quite as disastrous as you would think. They are 14, 22, and 1 ATS. Obviously, that's not good. That's 28th in the NBA. But with the amount, it feels like they're getting blown out by 20 plus every night, right? And that's not necessarily the case. They are starting to cover a little bit more of late. They're better against the spread than Phoenix. Atlanta is an NBA worst 8-27 against the number.
Yikes! Yeah, and I think there's going to be opportunities moving forward because these spreads are only going to get bigger, especially with Cade Cunningham out of the lineup, and water tends to find its level. Only sharp bettors are going to be on the Pistons, and that should tell you everything that you need to know. It's a team that do you want to bet them every night? No, you don't need that kind of stress in your life. But
absolutely not.
I do think that it's a team that I wouldn't just outright ignore them night to night. If you like betting the NBA and you look at the slate, when you get the Pistons at double digits, last night it didn't work out. Thankfully, I didn't take the dive there last night, but I do think that in certain spots the Pistons might be trustable.
1, the Pistons aren't that bad. 2, sharps are betting the Pistons. Those are 2 money quotes. Excuse me, Brandon. We'll have to clip those for the RotoWire Twitter account. The nice thing is when Detroit keeps it relatively in reason, or when they put up 47 in the first quarter, it's they're a gold mine for the team that's playing against them, right? This is the ideal scenario of if you rolled Domantas Sabonis out there in DFS last night, you're just crossing your fingers, please play 30 minutes. And this was a competitive enough game that he played 38. He goes 16 of 21 from the field, 37, 13, and 10. Keegan Murray had a nice night as well. Right after I dropped him in a shallow league to pick up Goga Bitadze. He goes for 32 points and 5 3-pointers with 2 blocks. I actually did have the over on 5.5 assists for De'Aaron Fox, which ended up sinking one of my underdog entries last night, and had that tethered to Jaden Ivey over 2.5 turnovers. Would not recommend betting turnovers in general, but when it's the Pistons, when it's Jaden Ivey, it was actually a really fun sweat. He picked up 2 turnovers over the course of a minute. The one that pushed it over was a charge that was reviewed. I mean, there is nothing more thrilling than waiting out a review, hoping that a charge is called.
Well, that's great. Yeah,
that's a charge. That's a charge.
It's definitely one of those bets that it's got to be an underdog play where you're slamming some together. You can't just solo bet turnovers, sit there and watch an NBA game. That's just, you're not getting your money's worth on League Pass if that's the way you're consuming this sport. But that's the issue when you talk about De'Aaron Fox and him falling short of the total on his assists. I hate when I bet a prop and a game turns into a blowout, because it seems like that's when I don't even feel hopeful that I'm going to get there by the end of the game, because I'm just sitting there on pins and needles waiting for the head coach to take the guy out of the lineup entirely. So that's that can be a frustrating watch. I dealt with that last night. The Magic were swiftly taken care of by the Minnesota Timberwolves. But if you're on any Magic props, you at least got a decent sweat out of it, because they didn't have a rotation. So it's not like Jamal Mosley couldn't go to this bench group that it didn't exist. They only had 9 guys active last night.
I want to talk about the Magic in a moment, but I do want to close out Detroit and just kind of give a look at, all right, here's what the rotation could be over the next week or so with Cade Cunningham out. And, the timeline is 7 to 10 days. Could be 7 days, could end up being 2 or 3 weeks. You never really know. Obviously, Detroit, sitting at 3-34 on the season, they're in no position to rush Cade Cunningham back. But we saw Jaden Ivey, he's continuing to start. He played 33 minutes last night. Looked decent outside of the 4 turnovers, 22, 6, 5, 2 steals. Killian Hayes moved into the starting lineup. I wish I would have bet his turnover prop. He had 5 turnovers, I think, in the first half. Finished with 6. That's kind of who Killian Hayes is. You can, if you're in a deeper league and you really need assists and maybe a few steals here and there, you could grab him. But 4 points on 4 shots in 31 minutes in a game where the Pistons actually played pretty well for half of it. That's kind of what you're looking at with Killian Hayes. I wondered if, in a roundabout way, the Cunningham absence, that's 38 minutes a night that are up for grabs, if that would lead to a little bit more Asar Thompson. Last night it did not. 14 minutes for Asar. Did pick up 3 fouls. Did have 3 steals in 14 minutes, but not necessarily looking like he's going to be a big-time beneficiary. We did see a little more Marcus Sasser off the bench, but not a whole lot there for fantasy.
Man, Asar Thompson, you talk about a guy that has hit a rookie wall hard and fast. He has given you a whole lot of nothing recently, and was a guy that we talked about weeks ago. It's heavy in the trade market, somebody that we wanted to target or even sell high on, and we're talking about some big names that you could package together and try and get for an Asar Thompson package. But now I see him out there on the waiver wire. I'm not even interested. But I do think this Cade Cunningham injury, while it's unfortunate because I love watching him play and he's been putting up incredible numbers, it does open up some opportunities. Jaden Ivey is somebody I know we've gotten a lot of questions about. I like his talent, and I think with the usage rise that you're going to see with what the kind of workload he's going to have, I think this could be an opportunity for him to blossom, points and assists for sure. And as long as that percentage stays up, I think Jaden Ivey could be a guy that helps you for the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, before we talk Orlando Magic, we got a message from our good pals over at Underdog. Underdog Fantasy, it's the #1 platform for NBA best ball in those DFS player pick'em contests that we talk about all the time. If you haven't tried Underdog, now's the time, because if you're a new user, you receive a first-time deposit bonus up to $100, plus an invaluable free 6-month subscription to rotowire.com. All you got to do is use the promo code RWNBA. That's RWNBA. Go to underdogfantasy.com or download the Underdog app. It's a wonderful app. I use it all the time. Go download that today. Use that promo code RWNBA. You'll get that free RotoWire subscription and that deposit bonus up to $100. So you put in $100, they'll match it. All of a sudden, you got $200 to play with on underdog. So very good deal there. You mentioned the Magic. Were you in the house last night for this beatdown?
I was front and center. It was not pretty. It was, it happened fast too. It was 11-0 right out of the gate, and you could tell the Magic had nothing left. And really, we shouldn't be surprised. This is a team that, and I don't mean this from the totality of the season, but definitely within the last week, have been playing way over their heads. Their shooting percentage prior to last night, their three-point shooting percentage over a stretch of 4 games was like 46%. They'd been making 18 threes per game. That's 8 more than their average on the season. So they've been getting by in almost like a college basketball kind of a way when you see these teams in the tournament where you go, you don't have the bodies to compete with the Blue Bloods, but they just get red hot from 3. That was the Magic against the Nuggets last Friday night, against the Atlanta Hawks on Sunday night at the Kia Center. I'm still getting used to saying that. And Paolo Banchero has been playing incredible, but there's a bug going around the team right now. I don't know who all it's impacting. I know Paolo looked like he was gassed from the tip-off last night. So I think it was just one of those games that you take it, you throw it away from a fantasy perspective, betting, real-life NBA. I don't think you really learn anything about the Magic. This is a beat-up team right now. Half their roster, including Franz Wagner, is out. So what can you really look at and say, okay, well, I'm going to have these grand takeaways about them and where they're at. The bottom fell out. They need to get healthy. They got a couple days off. To me, and this is what I love the most about working these games is, I know the Magic well because they're always there, but I get a good up close and personal view of the opponents and some of these teams that I feel like I learn so much more when I'm at the arena than when I'm watching on TV. The Minnesota Timberwolves are so for real. And I think it all starts with Karl Anthony Towns. I'm seeing a level of aggressiveness and assertiveness, almost acting like a bully on the court, that I'd never seen from him. This is a guy who's always had skill, his ability to shoot the 3 at his size, to handle the ball. He's got size. So, yeah, he's always been a great rebounder. And fantasy managers like yourself have known about Karl Anthony Towns and appreciated him for a long time. But I would never say that Cat was playing winning basketball. And I think it always capped the upside of Minnesota. I think something has clicked. Something has changed. They didn't even need Anthony Edwards last night. If you look at the stat line, it looks like he got hurt. He just stood there. He dealt with a little bit of foul trouble, but it was all Karl Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert is a menace. And I'm definitely a T-Wolves buyer in terms of playoff success.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards had, I would say, pretty inarguably his worst game of the year, right? I mean,
yeah,
6
it
points,
was
7 shots, 5 turnovers in 26 minutes. Just didn't really need him. Like you said, I mean, Minnesota led by 17 at the end of the first quarter. They pushed that lead to 30 at the half, and it was pretty much sewn up at that point. Karl Anthony Towns went over his points prop by halftime. I think it was 21 and a half last night. He finished with 28. Yeah,
so Goga Bitadze is one of them. Goga Bitadze was sick going into last night's game. I didn't even realize that until after they had tipped off, but he wasn't feeling well. And then you had Mo Wagner's a good offensive piece, but not a great defender. And Wendell Carter Jr.'s out. So you have a sick defensive center and an offensive backup. So it wasn't a great recipe for stopping those 2 twin towers.
This was kind of a throwback rotation for the Magic. This feels like 2 or 3 years ago where you got Chuma Okeke starting, playing 27 minutes, going 1 of 10 from the field, as Chuma Okeke does. I almost felt bad for Banchero and Suggs. I mean, Bitadze, I actually love what he's been giving them, but like you said, he wasn't 100% last night. He got in foul trouble early, only played 17 minutes. I mean, Caleb Houston started alongside Suggs in the backcourt. He goes 3 of 12. You're not going to win a ton of games when you got 2 starters combining for 4 of 22 shooting. And then, right now their bench unit is just, it's rough. I mean, you got Trevelyan Queen, you got Anthony Black playing way more minutes than he probably should. Cole Anthony played last night, got hurt like 7 minutes in, didn't come back, tweaked the thigh injury. Wagner and Banchero, I thought were kind of the only 2 positives. Suggs played all right last night. What about Markelle Fultz? We spent a lot of time on this podcast trying to speculate and look into, the crystal ball as to, when he could come back. Yeah, he's been back now for 2 games. He's played 15 and 13 minutes respectively off the bench. What have you seen from him?
There's just no confidence in his shot. And I mean that from anywhere on the floor. It doesn't seem like he's confident that when he releases, the ball is going to go in. And I think we saw him start to come around last year. A lot of that was due to time and repetition, and it took a while for him to get to a point where, you know, he found his spot on the court, that elbow jumper that he had started to, it started to come around. His shot started to look a little bit more like what we saw at UW, but I'm watching this guy in warmups and it looks broken. And then you see it.
Wait, Markelle Fultz shot looks broken? What?
Yeah, I know.
No way.
Markelle, write that one down. Put that up as a headline on RotoWire. But it felt like he was starting to get over that a little bit last year, and this injury has just every bad habit that he has in terms of the shot motion and shot selection. It just seems like all of that has come roaring back. So he is tough to trust right now for the Magic. Definitely not somebody that you can rely on in fantasy. And I don't know when it changes. And you're coming up to a deadline where the Magic have some decisions to make here. And Markelle Fultz, between his inability to confidently shoot the basketball, even around the rim, and his injury history, would not be shocked at all to see him become somebody else's project moving forward.
Yeah, Fultz, I don't even think he's a hold right now in most fantasy leagues. I wrote an article for the site that went up yesterday, and it'll be up on Yahoo today as well, kind of looking at some, somewhat high-owned players who could be dropped. We're not talking like somebody who's 2% owned. Like, yeah, you could cut bait on Okiki, but it's, guys hovering around 50% roster rate. And I was pretty surprised. Wendell Carter is still rostered in 48% of Yahoo leagues, at least as of yesterday afternoon. I'm done with him. I'm cutting him pretty much everywhere. I know he's kind of dealing with a new injury now. He's missed 3 games in a row. Even if he's back, I mean, every game that he's played in, he's not had like a single like, whoa, okay, Wendell Carter, he's back type of performance. Like even when he stayed healthy for a stretch of games and started, I think both Bitadze and Wagner have been better than him this year.
I completely agree, because Bitadze brings it on the defensive end in a way that Wendell Carter Jr. doesn't. And last night, notwithstanding that was a bad performance from Goga, but we detailed why he was sick and clearly less than 100%. And Mo Wagner is such a spark plug for off that second unit is really anchored by Cole Anthony and Mo Wagner and their production. You look at bench, if you look this up on NBA.com, their bench points as a unit, they're 4th best in the NBA. That's Mo Wagner and Cole Anthony that are helping that stat stay afloat the way that it has. So I don't know where Wendell Carter Jr. fits in to that equation. When you factor all of that in and the fact that he's not playing, I'm completely with you. I think in the fantasy circles, he's living off of reputation a little bit, but this is a completely different circumstance we're living in right now.
Yeah. I was looking back at that draft class, 2018. I mean, that was a long time ago, obviously. And, the top of that draft looks pretty decent. Obviously Luka and Trae Young and Jaren Jackson ended up being better than the top 2 picks, Ayton and Bagley. But I don't think you look back and say that was, one of those like, oh man, what could have been type of picks. I mean, the guys that went directly after Wendell Carter were Colin Sexton and Kevin Knox. And, later on you got Mikal Bridges at 10, SGA at 11, Miles Bridges at 12,
Jeez,
Michael
that would have been
Porter
nice.
at 14. It's like, yeah, those would have been nice, but I don't really recall anybody clamoring for SGA or Bridges to go 7 in that draft.
No, I mean, it's hard to remember exactly where we were at in terms of
that was
that,
the Mo Bamba draft. Like obviously Wendell Carter was drafted by Chicago, but again, it feels
right.
like, I think Orlando made the right pick at the time. Like one of my bigger misses over the last few years is I was a big Bamba guy. I thought that was going to work out. I thought he was the type of player who was going to, like, 'cause he never looked great at Texas. And I was like, no, he's the type of guy that's going to succeed in an NBA system. And it just hasn't happened.
Well, it's all, it's work ethic and the want and desire, these things that you can't test at a combine. Yeah. That's what's held Mo Bamba back. It's not size. He can shoot the 3. He can do a lot of the things as a 7-footer that you want on your NBA roster. And if that's sitting there at 6, you do it all over again. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, that's also in the midst of the Orlando like length raid drafting
Oh my God.
style when they
Yeah.
were just like, all right, well, whoever's got the longest wingspan, we're taking that guy. It doesn't seem to matter.
I'm not sure they're over that just yet.
Yeah, right. Seeing some good questions in the chat. Keep stacking those up. We will hit those in about 5 or 10 minutes. Just going to talk about a few more takeaways from Tuesday night. Maybe look ahead at some of the games on our big Wednesday night slate. Got some fun ones. Wolves, Celtics. That'll be a big one.
A great game.
Spurs, Pistons. Kind of battle the bottom feeders. Interested to see, how much we see of Wembanyama tonight. And then Heat Thunder will be a really fun one as well. I mean, Brandon, I was thinking about that Heat Thunder game, and we won't have Jimmy Butler, so some of the luster maybe is wearing off that one. But Heat Thunder for a while, if you rewind like 10 years, that was like a premier matchup. Obviously, those teams met in the NBA Finals, and that got me thinking. What would you say was your absolute peak of like NBA fandom? Maybe it's right now because you cover a team, and obviously it's not like I've slowed down over the last 10 years, but I would say around like when I was like a sophomore, junior in college. That's when I was like the most absolute locked in. It was like I am planning my entire schedule to watch a Heat Thunder regular season game.
Yeah. Basketball that I can't even they're so different. I can't compare them to each other. One that I'm in right now is I'll call it the post-COVID era. The love that I have, and of course, part of it is that I work with an NBA team and I'm at these games, but it was the bubble. Having basketball on in the heat of the summer when everything is shut down, the level of love I felt for that I have felt for the NBA from that point on has exceeded anything that predates it in my life. So that's like its own era from the bubble till now. Prior to that, I would say that those grindhouse Pistons teams and the end of the LA Lakers run, that's a pretty hot era for me. And then when I was a kid, it was all about Michael Jordan. So it was like he was the only thing that mattered, but I was obsessed with watching Bulls basketball like every kid in the 90s. So those are my three hottest eras would be, I think if I were to track it.
Yeah, I would say like the LeBron Heat era was when I was like the most locked in. I think it's just kind of, I had a lot of free time in college. I could just kind of sit back and watch games whenever I wanted. Like the Miami Heat winning streak, that was a big one. Like I remember where I was, ironically at Panama City Beach at a seafood restaurant where people ended up getting sick afterward when they snapped the streak, losing to the Bulls. Other than that, for me, I kind of went through like a dark period from like 2006 to 2010. Like in high school, I was way more of a college basketball guy at that point. I was like obsessed with Pittsburgh basketball for some reason, despite living in Green Bay. Like that was my squad. And prior to that, though, you were Orlando Magic. I was the biggest Tracy McGrady fan on the entire planet. I had one birthday where I got 4 Tracy McGrady jerseys. That was too many. Seemed cool at the time. Turned out to be too many. And a story, longtime listeners of the spot have probably heard this. I've told this before. My birthday's in late July. So, back in the days of, you'd bring like treats in on your birthday. I never got to do that. And it was, when you're in like 4th and 5th grade, that's a big deal. You want to do that. Obviously now that would be like, no, I don't want to. My mom one time brought in a cake for Tracy McGrady's birthday rather than my birthday because I was not able to celebrate mine during the school year.
Well, I mean that is, you talk about peak level of fandom right there. He was at the arena the other day. I should have let him know.
God, I love T-Mac so much. It was a problem.
I'll give you a quick T-Mac story. I emceed a celebrity basketball game that the last time the Pro Bowl is going to be in Orlando this year. It took a break. The last time it was in Orlando, I emceed a celebrity basketball game where it was mostly former NFL players. Keenan Allen played in it. He was the only current NFL player. And Tracy McGrady was the only former NBA player that took part in the game. So I'm on the court with McGrady, who's the nicest guy in the world.
Oh, way.
And of course, I mean, this was a couple of years ago. He's still well retired at this point. You talk about schooling everybody. It was like he was on a different planet from everybody else. And these are high-level athletes that he was playing with. But it just goes to show NBA skill, even when it's older, is on a different level than anything we can even comprehend. And he's still good.
Yeah, man, he's got a kid who's coming up too, who's going to be, I think, a pretty decent high school recruit. So maybe I'll have to hitch my wagon there. I think if I've been around Tracy McGrady at league events. I've never talked to him. That's like the most starstruck. Him and Ron Dane are the two guys for me. Like I've met Ron Dane many times. He's very available in Madison. I'll tell you that. He's just kind of wandering around town. If I ever met T-Mac, man, I don't know what I would say. I've been around LeBron. Like I've been to a few All-Star games, and you go to the media scrums, and it's like, oh, there's LeBron James. Like I should be probably a little more starstruck. No, T-Mac would be like 3 levels up from that. All right, I want to talk Grizzlies real quickly, and then we'll get to the questions in the chat. One of these actually just came in, and this is exactly what I wanted to discuss. Good question from James. Now that Ja is out for the rest of the season, is it time to trade away Jaren Jackson? And if so, who should I target? I am going through this exact same debate in the RotoWire Stake League. I'm making a little bit of a charge. I was sitting down near the bottom of the standings. It's been a good couple of weeks. I'm moving into potential eater territory. This is a league where you just want to finish in the top half. You do not want to be in the bottom half. And Jaren Jackson's been good. Obviously, he did not play last night. Doesn't seem like a major injury. They're calling it just a bruised knee. They got a few days off now. They play a back-to-back Friday and Saturday. My answer to this question would be I want to hold Jaren Jackson for a bit because, we saw some pretty explosive performances. Like I do think the offensive ceiling now for Jaren Jackson's a little bit higher. I also think the efficiency could go down. The case we made early in the season was he kind of needs Ja Morant to be the player that he could be. Like you don't really want Jaren Jackson being your number one option. He's just not an efficient scorer. That's not really where his game is at right now. So I would try to ride this out for a few more weeks. But eventually I think I'm going to want to trade Jaren Jackson because I think the Grizzlies have no choice but to kind of just view this as a lost season. Like they're not going to be a buyer at the deadline. And as much as I love Triple J and Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart, those guys aren't going to pull you into the postseason in a super competitive West. So I worry that the Grizzlies could be this year's version of the Jazz last year, where you got a great 65 games out of Lauri Markkanen, and then at the end of the year, you got shutdowns and things like that. So I think hold Jaren Jackson maybe for another month, and then at that point try to offload. But if you want to do that sooner, totally understandable. I think first of all, where do you come in on Triple J, and then we could talk about some potential trade targets.
Yeah, I think now would be the time. The only thing that makes me nervous about sending that trade offer today is that he's not available, and I wonder if an injury would drive down his trade value. But I like the mindset that James has here because I'm not sure a lot of people in your league are going to be thinking along those lines. That was a big topic. Jaren Jackson Jr. first quarter of the season was really disappointing, and it was the lack of a 2-man game that Ja Morant possesses, the stress that he causes to a defense opens things up for Jaren Jackson Jr. He's a completely different player, is JJJ, when Ja Morant isn't out there. So I think it would be a good time as long as the injury doesn't drive down that trade value too much. I would look at guys, just look at overall scoring, look at the current rankings as they stand right now, and maybe go 5 spots lower than where Jackson is and see if you can get a straight up deal that way.
Yeah, I mean, you're not getting – I don't think you're getting Jason Tatum or Anthony Edwards or guys like that who are kind of hovering in the 15 to 20 range. I'm looking over the last month at guys who have provided similar production. I mean, I think I would start with Domantas Sabonis. And again, you're probably not getting him. Maybe you have to toss in a sweetener. Kristaps Porzingis, if you're on the high end of him in terms of health, I would not be doing that.
No, you can't trade for Staps right now.
Yeah, Damian Lillard has not played well of late. I think you could maybe catch a frustrated Damian Lillard manager. He didn't play the other night due to a personal matter. Just hasn't been shooting it well. That could be kind of a my problem for your problem. Lauri Markkanen ranks about the same as Jaren Jackson. I think you might run into the same issues with Markkanen, although the Jazz have played better of late. Alperen Şengün.
What do you think about Cade Cunningham? Injured.
I was just going to say that. I mean, yeah, with Cade, obviously the Pistons have 3 wins and they could be a tag team, but I don't think they need to tank. I don't think they need to pull Cade Cunningham from the lineup. I mean, he's played almost every game this year and they have 3 wins. So I'm not really worried about him as a shutdown. I think that would actually be a pretty good one if you're looking for, kind of a shakeup in terms of, if this is a category league, what you're targeting. Obviously, it's completely different players. But if you're looking to replace, Jaren Jackson's blocks, that's going to be pretty tough. You could try to get like a Walker Kessler or something like that. But again, I don't think you have to trade Jaren Jackson right now, but I would want to do it probably before or slightly after the All-Star break.
I would also say this for anybody that looks and goes, hey, well, Memphis is fine. They just won by 17 last night in Dallas, and Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic played. That is the analogy I would use, Nick, is when a star is about to go out, a star is about to die. It usually shines the brightest at that point, and I think that could be the case here. My computer was just making all sorts of noises. I don't know if you could hear that. This is the dying star that shines super bright before it goes out, and it was great that they were able to do that. Emotional win for Memphis, but I don't think that kind of thing is going to keep up.
No, and I wanted to touch on, is there anybody you could target, with John Morant now out for the season, and there's just not a whole lot there, man. Like obviously Smart, Desmond Bane, those guys are rostered everywhere. Luke Kennard, he's not a point guard, but maybe some more minutes trickle to him if you need threes. I don't really mind picking him up. I think from a minutes perspective, it was John Conchar who played 25 last night, but Derrick Rose is also hurt. He's going to factor into the mix. Like there's not really, there's not a TJ McConnell stepping in for Tyrese Halliburton type of player here in Memphis, at least not right now.
No, it's good to see Marcus Smart out there, but I'm sure he's already rostered across the board. I mean, there is no replacement for John Morant. I think the other guys, you're going to see Desmond Bane's numbers are going to go back up. That'll be the biggest increase. And if you have Marcus Smart, maybe as a bench player, throw him into your starting lineup. Yep. But I don't think we're going to see, a lot of movement in terms of the other guys. And I do worry that Memphis could go into tank mode, and this could look very different in Memphis within the next couple of weeks.
I do think it's good for Desmond Bane. I don't worry about him as much as I do Jaren Jackson. It's just going to be higher volume for Bane, and that's a good thing. I mean, he took 27 shots last night. I don't think that's going to be a unique experience going forward. So if there is a kind of shorter term beneficiary, it's probably Bane. Let's get to some of the live viewer questions, and we start with Ian. He says, thoughts on Josh Hart? Thinking about grabbing him in a 9-cat 16-team league, and we're looking rest of season value. I'm always a Josh Hart guy. I feel like I roster him every year on a bunch of teams. I mean, it's really the rebounding, right? I mean, kind of the out of position rebounding. He's shooting guard eligible in some leagues. Normally listed as a small forward. The rebounding's been better of late. He went through a pretty rough stretch through the early middle portion of the season, but last 10 games he's up closer to 8 rebounds per game. The scoring has been relatively down this season. 3-point shooting has completely fallen off a cliff. He's not giving you a whole lot on defense. So I do think in a 16-team league, I don't mind rostering him. I mean, it's good team, good situation. Should be playing 25 to 30 minutes, but he's probably a 4-game starter only.
Yeah, he's going to give you those middle of the road performances with he gets hot. He'll have a spike for a couple of games, but Josh Hart just kind of is what he is. But you're a Josh Hart guy. Tom Thibodeau's a Josh Hart guy, so he's not going anywhere. Shoots at a decent clip right now, his 3-point shooting could really use an improvement. But you're getting the rebounds, you're getting occasional spurts where he's a contributor in the scoring department. But Josh Hart is not going anywhere. He's one of the more steady players in fantasy.
Don Sicario says, morning all. Raptors screw job. I assume he's referring to the RJ Barrett moving screen call last night that took what would have been go-ahead 3-pointer off the board. Raptors end up losing 132-131.
Did you see the fourth quarter numbers, the fourth quarter disparity of free throws?
That's what the Lakers do, man. They're always near the top of the league.
They shot 23 fourth quarter free throws. The Raptors shot 2 more than you and I did. Hey,
it was 35 to 13. 36 to 13 in terms of total attempts for the night.
Crazy. Yeah. Crazy. That was, if you've not watched, is it Rajakovic, I think is how you pronounce his last name, the head coach of the Toronto Raptors. If you have not watched his rant yet, when you're done listening to us, do yourself a favor.
Yeah, both Quickly and Scotty Barnes ended up fouling out late. I mean, Anthony Davis pretty much by himself. You know, he had more free throws than the entire Raptors team. He went 13 of 14. Huge night for AD. Don does follow up with a good question here. Should he trade Mikal Bridges for Pascal Siakam in a 9-category league?
Man, everything's coming up Raptors these days. Mikal Bridges is not he's not taking that real strong leap that it looked like he was going to early in the season or late last year. I think I'd rather have Pascal Siakam at this point.
I would rather have Siakam right now. I think the question is, is Pascal Siakam on a different team in a month, and does that help or hurt him?
Well, it's impossible to tell, and I just can't make trades right now based on who is and is not going to be dealt because we just don't know. So I would just eliminate that from. I mean, you can think about it, but I would eliminate that from your decision-making process. If you like Pascal Siakam better, a team that trades for him is probably going to put him in a similar situation that he's in right now. He's a specific type of player in terms of what he does, and I don't see that changing. But you're more comfortable with the know, or what you do know, and what he is in Toronto is certainly a fantasy viable asset. I like what I've seen as of late. I think the Raptors are playing a little bit better. I love the way they looked last night and scoring into the 130s. Got to love that for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I think you're right to probably simplify this. To be honest, I didn't realize how poor Bridges has been. I'm looking at the last 30 days. He ranks outside the top 160 in 8-category leagues, which the efficiency is a big part of it. Like, the raw scoring numbers look okay. He had 42 the other night against Portland, but even with that, I mean, he's shooting 39% from the field over his last 15 games. The 3-point shooting has been way down. Like, the free throw shooting has been in the low 80s for a guy who's typically better than that. And, perhaps biggest of all, he's averaging 0.9 steals plus blocks over the last 15 games. So if you're not getting, your 1.5 steals and your 0.8 blocks or whatever it is from Mikal Bridges, that's a big part of the reason that he was being pushed into the top 20 in a lot of drafts. So yeah, right now, I mean, Pascal Siakam has been a vastly better fantasy player. So if you take the trade deadline concerns out of it, and even if he goes somewhere else, it's not like he's just going to be, a 13 points a game guy. Like, he's going to be a major player if he ends up, being shipped out of Toronto. So if you're on the receiving end of Siakam, Don, I would do this deal. Kimron says, "Hey guys, Rozier is on fire. Who can I target?" Good question, because LaMelo Ball could be back as soon as Friday. If it's not Friday, it should be in the next few games. And Terry Rozier could still be plenty effective, especially with Gordon Hayward currently on the shelf and likely to get injured again. But where he's kind of in that Desmond Bane situation, right? Where it's like, all right, without LaMelo, go crazy. You're the number one guy. When LaMelo comes back, you're still a big factor, but we have to lower your ceiling a little bit. So I think now is the time to try to cut bait on Terry Rozier. He's been a top 15 player over the last month. Now, you're not getting top 15 value for Rozier, because if people are paying attention, they'll know that LaMelo's coming back. But in terms of who you could target, does anybody come to mind? I think obviously you try to aim high. Fred VanVleet, DeMar DeRozan, maybe Jaren Jackson. We're talking about somebody who could lose some value. You could try to get someone like a Brunson or a Markkanen, or even I don't know, if you're looking for more stability, this is probably pretty underwhelming. But CJ McCollum. Anybody else come to mind for you?
I like the way the Spurs have been playing as of late, and if you're able to get this done in the next couple of hours, I'm thinking he's going to put together a pretty good stat line tonight. I like Keldon Johnson. I think that maybe that could be a name that you target. I know a Keldon Johnson fantasy manager is going to be pretty frustrated with the up and down that you're getting from him and just the San Antonio Spurs in general. But if you've been watching their games, they have been much more predictable in terms of their performance, and I think he's a big part of that. Certainly somebody that handles the rock a ton. So I think a player like that is realistic and would improve your fantasy roster in the long term.
I think I would go Devin Vassell if I'm looking at a Spur. And it depends what kind of league you're in. Like, Keldon Johnson in a points league, I think makes a lot of sense. There are some downfalls in the category league, but I think if you're looking for a 1-for-1 type of deal, Vassell would be the guy in San Antonio for me. Paul says, trade question, Austin Reaves or Shaedon Sharpe? Who'd you rather have? I'd take Reaves.
Yeah, as a shade on Sharpe preseason truther, I can't say that it is paying huge dividends for me, but he's been good. I just overdrafted him. But right now, I like the way that Austin Reaves has been playing as of late. I tend to agree, and I love the passing stats that you get with Reaves as well. If you're in that category format.
George says, "What's up, Brandon and Nick? Just joined. Happy New Year to you both. Happy New Year to you as well, George. Appreciate the support and for watching along. All right, we'll zoom through the rest of these. We got about 5-10 more minutes. Cow Chad says, "I have been a big truther of both McDaniels for many years, but this year just hasn't worked out. But is Jalen McDaniels a viable stash with all the smoke around Pascal Siakam?" Interesting question. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't really know how to project forward who's going to get dealt. I think there are some guys where it is blatantly obvious. I'm not sure that Pascal Siakam is one of them. They already made a big move in trading OG Anunoby, and that might be it in terms of what they want to do to revamp this roster. Trading away all-star level players is not usually a winning formula. And I know the Raptors have been aggressive one time in their existence, but I don't think that's necessarily who they are. So no, I'm not buying into that.
I will say, if you're in a deeper league and you have like a stash spot, it's not the worst idea to grab him before the trade deadline, just in case. You have to go back to last season when Jalen McDaniels played like real minutes, but in the 30 games in which he played the most minutes, he averaged 14 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, 1.6 steals, shot about 49% from the field. That was a 30-game sample where he averaged about 31 minutes. So I think there is some viability there, but obviously you need Siakam to be traded. All right, Michael says, Jaden Ivey, Marcus Smart, or Tre Jones. Pick one who needs to go in a 10-team 9-cat league. So we're looking for a drop here.
Well, I think Marcus Smart, we saw it last night without Ja Morant, and that was part of the struggles that Memphis had early in the season. Not only did they not have Ja Morant, Marcus Smart was also not available. So I'm excited about him, at least for right now. So I'm definitely holding on him. And Jaden Ivey, I could say the exact same thing, but insert Cade Cunningham into the discussion, who's out at least another 10 days and could be even longer than that. So I think Tre Jones gets the X for me.
Yeah, it's definitely Jones or Ivey. In a 9-cat league, I think I would maybe lean toward cutting Ivey because of turnovers. He's going to turn it over 3-4 times a game. Tre Jones, he started the last 2. If he continues to start and play 30 minutes, I think he would easily be second behind Smart for me. It's just a matter of whether or not you trust that. So I will assuming Cade Cunningham is back in like a week, I would say cut bait on Jaden Ivey. All right, similar question. Keep in order Smart, Jones. Oh, okay. This is basically the same question, but Smart, Jones, or Ivey until Cade comes back. Yeah, same thing for me. I like Ivey over Jones as long as Cade is out. But if you're looking long term, I think I would be comfortable cutting bait with Ivey. We just don't know what's going to go on with the Pistons rotation. Paul says, I traded Booker and Anunoby for Giannis. Thoughts?
I love it. Good for you. Give me all the Giannis.
Yeah, I want Giannis. I mean, obviously you got to live with the free throw percentage if you're in a category league, but I think if you're okay with that and you're either doing well and you can offset it, or you're just punting that category, I want Giannis. I mean, the Bucks have been a disaster of late, but the one thing that's been constant is Giannis being a complete machine every single night. So I'm okay with that. I know Anunoby just had a good game, but I still think you're on the right side of that deal.
It doesn't seem like he's much of a factor offensively for the Knicks.
Not really.
But they've gotten better since they traded for him. So, and they traded for his defense. They're getting that right now. So it's definitely a win for the Knicks.
What do you guys make of the pseudo timeshare between Vooch and rebound legend Andre Drummond? Great question. I will say I kept Andre Drummond in my weekly lineup in my most important league this week. He's started the last game. I think at some point, they're going to put Vooch back in the starting lineup. I don't see why they would continue to bring him off the bench. But I mean, Drummond only needs like 17 minutes to still be like really fantasy viable, right? I mean, he's got 25 rebounds over the last 2 games, and he's only played 23 minutes in each of those. So even if he goes back to, 16, 17, 18 minutes off the bench, like I think he's still a hold. And, I think they'll try to trade Vucevic at the deadline. I don't know if there's going to be a taker. He's kind of in a weird situation, age, contract, effectiveness wise. But I'm holding Drummond. I'm definitely not giving up on him until we see a marked reduction in minutes or we get past the trade deadline and Vooch is still there. And I don't know. We just have no idea. Like the Bulls to me are the team that their roster could transform more than just about anybody's after the deadline. And I think if they kind of just go and play out the string mode, maybe they toss some minutes to Andre Drummond the rest of the way. I mean, I think like I said, I'm not getting rid of him. I would certainly be holding Drummond.
Oh, definitely. Think about this. So I'm looking at their numbers right now, side by side. Andre Drummond has played 500 less minutes this year than Nick Vucevic and has 5 less rebounds. That's insane. I mean, and their raw numbers. I mean, their totals outside of points scored really are not that different. So Andre Drummond has been a far superior fantasy player, and if you're in that category league, you don't have to worry about him tanking your 3-point percentage because he doesn't shoot them. Nick Vucevic, on the other end, does like to shoot the 3. He used to be decent at it. It's dropped off this year, shooting 28% from long range. So, yeah, Andre Drummond right now, this is like a resurrection of sorts.
All right, we'll go rapid fire through a few more of these. Just traded Vooch and Brandon Miller for Mikal Bridges in a 14-team, 12-cat league. Did I make the right move? I need free throws made badly. We just talked about Bridges. He's been in a slump of late, but I think if you really need free throws made, this is probably okay. I mean, Vucevic just doesn't really get to the line at all. That's been the case for a few years. He's at like 1.5 attempts per game. He's only taken like 55 free throws on the year. So, we're obviously worried about Mikal Bridges, but I also think, there's reasons to worry about Vooch going forward. Brandon Miller, ultimately, he's a rookie. He's, shown some flashes, but I think you made the right call here, specifically if you need the free throws.
Yeah, rookies tend to not get to the line. They don't get that respect from the officials. He's the type of player, the way that he plays, where he'll get that as his career goes along. You're right about Vooch, and Bridges is a vet. He knows how to get to the line.
About to close a deal on Dame Lillard for Chet Holmgren. Should I do it? 10-team points league. I think so.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I mean, Dame has not been as bad as you'd think. Obviously lately it's been a disaster, and I think some of the bad performances really stand out. But on balance, he's still been an elite fantasy player. But if you're in a points league, you're not necessarily getting the free throw percentage boost, and that's something that's massive with Lillard because he's taking a bunch of free throws. He's hitting them at like 90%. But yeah, in a points league, I don't really mind chasing after Chet Holmgren here. I mean, I think the big concern with Chet was, can he stay healthy? And he's answered that as affirmatively as possible so far. So I think that's actually a pretty fair deal. All right, how concerned are we about Ja Morant's 24-25 value? He's already more of a points league guy, and this is the kind of injury that can mess with your shot and take time to get back into rhythm once you return. Fair question. I mean, Ja's missed a ton of time over the last few years. He's always been a much better real-life player than fantasy player. I think there has been a disconnect there. Like Chad points out, he's a better points league guy. I wouldn't say I'm super worried about like his shot breaking down. I mean, he's kind of a shaky 3-point shooter as it is. To me, it's just more the accumulation of multiple injuries.
Yeah, Ja Morant's such an electrifying player, and knows how to get to the basket. I don't worry as much about the shot because he can find other ways to score. And I mean, we saw he missed all that time. He came back. He was back to his old self in game 1. So I really don't worry about that in terms of him coming back. It's just, it's frustrating, and shoulder injury could mess with him a little bit. But I would say my level of concern would be mild. It's just frustrating that it's even happening.
All right, we'll do 2 more, and then we got to get out of here. This should be a quick one. Bane for LaMelo. Should he do it? I think I'd rather have Bane. I just like LaMelo's the better player. He's a better fantasy player. We went down this road last year. He came back, got hurt again. Hornets are going nowhere right now. Man,
that's tempting because I would much rather have LaMelo Ball, but I don't trust his health.
Right. Yeah, it's super tough. I mean, obviously LaMelo's the better player. Nobody's debating that, but it's just, do you trust him to be healthy? And I don't really know if I do. So to me, it's like, where are you in the standings? If you're 8th right now, then yeah, trade for LaMelo, shoot for the upside. If you're 2nd in your league, I think I would take the safety of Desmond Bane. All right, let's try to pick out a good
I agree with that. I think it's very, very much dependent on what your record looks like.
Skeeter asked, should I pick up Fultz from waivers? Talked about him earlier. I would say no right now. Got to see him actually play real minutes. He hasn't looked good in the first 2 games since coming back. I would leave him alone for now. All right, we'll end on this one. Hey guys, for a 9-cat 12-team head-to-head league, would you trade Steph Curry and OG Anunoby to get SGA?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, hard to ship off a guy like Steph Curry. I think OG Anunoby is the perfect complementary trade piece.
Yep.
We already saw a solid trade come through where he was a part of that. So it seems like, for anybody else that's listening, if you have OG Anunoby, clearly there's a market for him plus a superstar to improve your superstar status. And I think that's exactly what you're doing here. SGA he'll be in the conversation for MVP at the end of the year.
SGA over the last 30 days is shooting 56% from the field. That is insane. Curry's at 41% in that span. So, yeah, you're never going to feel good about trading Curry. There's going to be nights where he hits 7 threes and you're like, what was I doing? But no, I want the SGA side of this, and you have to pay up to get him. Like, you can't do Curry straight up for SGA, which says a lot about how great SGA has been this season. So, yeah, I would do that deal. I mean, I think, like you said, OG Anunoby is kind of the perfect swing piece, and you're selling high. You just played really well at his best game as a Knick the other night. But in general, I think there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. The defensive stats have kind of fallen off this season for OG. So knowing what you got to do to get a player like SGA this season, I think I'm fine with that. All right, guys. I want to thank you for all the great questions. Wish we could get to more of them. We will hit more of those certainly next week. Brandon and I do this show every single Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. You can always find us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube channel. You can find us on Twitter. You can find the audio version archived on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. We do these streams 5 days a week. So if you didn't get your question answered today, we apologize, but jump back in tomorrow. We'll have Dr. A, Steve Alexander, and Rick Kamla coming at you. On Fridays, our guy Alex Barutha hops on with Ken Kreitz and Shannon McEwen. They take questions. They talk waiver wire going into the weekend. I host on Mondays with Alex. We take listener questions there as well. So appreciate all the support. Please go like, subscribe to our channel, RotoWire Fantasy Basketball. That helps us out a ton. You can leave comments there. If you didn't get your question answered, throw it in the comments. We'll jump in there and give you an answer on YouTube. So thank you as always for listening along. Brandon, always good to chat with you. And I'll see you on SXM later tonight.
Good luck out there tonight.